And we're live.
Welcome, everybody. It's been 2 weeks. We didn't have a show last week, but we're back. And I let my Spritz card lapse. I ran out of Dash funds, so I've got to get that funded again. That's why we have our friend, the StreamYard duck, up here in the corner. So we'll get that taken care of for next time. But yeah, welcome. We're going to be talking today about RPCs, remote procedure calls. Hopefully, that's now that I've said it, we don't have to worry about not having that defined. Remote procedure calls, RPCs. We have with us AJ. Welcome, AJ, back. I think it's been a while. It's been like months, I guess. Yeah, let's get started. So today I want to talk about some high-level stuff before we get into the RPC stuff. I want to talk about Dash Incubator, what we are trying to accomplish in the incubator in general. And I think that what we have here is kind of a little bit of a move toward that goal. So this is good news. In the incubator, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people and projects get off the ground from 0 to 1. So what I found in Dash many years ago was that it was pretty difficult to get started with compared to other development teams such as DCG who have been working on stuff for years and years and years. They have all the background. And so Incubator was a place to say, hey, developers, you might not be able to have like a successful proposal coming out of nowhere, coming out of left field. But if you want to work on Dash stuff and you don't want to have to make the full jump through a arduous interview process to work for DCG, because it's basically full-time work. I think they do some contract work as well. But I thought that the jump was too much. But if we can just have a place for people to come and do 5 Dash tasks here, 10 Dash tasks there, or even 100 Dash tasks, or even a longer term stay at the Dash Incubator, that would be a great place for people to get from 0 to 1. So AJ, you were one of the first people that I wanted to have work in the incubator, because I saw your work many years ago. Like, we live in the same town. I went to your meetups. I saw your skill set. You were very good at documentation, very good at low-level JavaScript stuff, and focusing on web developers, getting web developers the skills that they need with your Beyond Code bootcamp stuff. I consumed a lot of that. And so I thought, like, this is the guy of all the guys that I know, even tangentially in Utah. You were the guy that I wanted to work with. And so, yeah, we brought you into the incubator. You've done a bunch of work for us, and a lot of the work that you've done is kind of lower level stuff that doesn't unfortunately see the light of day until there's a web user interface that bring that to light. And so you've been working on like libraries for Dash payments and merchant tooling. And honestly, some of that has not really risen to the light of day that we had hoped for, but because it needs web user interfaces on it. And, getting that is not an easy task. We've had Jojo Byte helping us with a little bit of that. But for a variety of reasons, we haven't been able to get all of those things done. So a little bit more about the path and the arc of the incubator is that I saw that people work better and just more motivated in general when they have their own proposals. And so I felt that personally. Like, I felt the the weight of the proposal on me to have to perform and deliver value and things like that. But it wasn't being carried out to the degree that I wanted it to for other strategists, or back in the day, they were called admins. There is a little bit of a distinction between those roles even today. But at a certain point, we changed our rule set and we said, we're going to have strategists have their own proposals so that they have more a tighter alignment with the MNOs and just delivering their own proposals. So we did that. JojoByte, you've been working for a couple months under JojoByte's proposal, but also continued to work under my proposal as well. This RPC stuff was one of those where I just really wanted it done. So I pulled you back and said, hey, I'll fund this under my proposal if you can get it done. Not the RPC stuff, I'm sorry. We were working on proposal stuff, getting proposals delivered through a web interface. And RPC happened to be one of those things, that a required component of that. Why don't you just talk a little bit about that process so that I can stop talking? What was that general process of, I had you doing work on building a library to have proposals be able to be submitted through web interface. But then there were some things that needed to be done before that. And how was that process?
Let me circle back around to that. So I have been paid a lot of money by the Dash Incubator, by the Dash voters over the last 3 years or so. And that's so much so that I understand that it's ruffled a few feathers. And one of the things that has been frustrating for me is I 100% believe that the value that the Dash community is getting out of what I've done is far more than what the payment has been. Other than that, it's unrealized. So the potential is far more.
Yeah.
But it's been unrealized because for various reasons, when I've wrapped up a project, I don't want to say time after time, but kind of in a way, time after time, there's been some sort of situational thing. Somebody raises a stir in the community about an issue, and favor goes from the thing that we were working towards to support, favor shifts, or a key resource that was going to be providing a connecting integration, or a partner that this was going to be helping drops the project that they're working on, or there's just been a lot of that unfortunate type of business going on. And I really want recognition for the work that I'm doing, in a sense that I want people to know that their Dash has gone towards a good cause, and that the cost of good software simply isn't cheap, but this isn't something where there's not been deliverables month after month after month. There have been deliverables month after month after month, but those deliverables have been, they're documented, they're tested, they are production ready, but they're not in products that are currently popular.
I think a good example of that is the work that you did on the dips that you proposed, but they never really got anywhere other than being dips on a screen. We didn't talk much about them. So is that kind of what you're talking about? Or
well, the dips
libraries as well?
I would say the libraries that implement the dips would be more important. So the algorithm for doing the cache send is actually implemented.
Yeah.
There is not it's not implemented on the mobile devices. It's not implemented in the desktop wallet. It's not implemented in a web wallet. So it's implemented, it's available. I have used it. I have been using it to send money to Kraken. When I cash out, I've used it with Jojo in a command line tool to test. But there's a number of things like that where I'm using it because I'm using it in the ugly way, because I the web development that I do is not user interface. I do user experience, which is essentially wireframing, and I do software engineering, because both of those are types of engineering. User experience is often misconstrued as UI, but user experience is actually about, it's engineering. It's understanding the path the user is going to take, what roadblocks they're going to hit. It's not about what color are they going to like or what psychological effect is a circle or a square going to have, but it's about the critical path is what it's called in the old school textbooks, and that sort of thing. And then the software engineering is not just can we put some code together, but how do we uh, create these functions in basically the most flat way possible, the least abstractions, but with the necessary abstractions in place so that they'll be accessible to developers that want to use them. And one great thing that has come out of this is, as I have had the opportunity to see some of the other developers use these tools and get the feedback on it, to see that those design decisions have been validated.
Yeah.
But it's more the library code that I'm talking about. Like, that is code that can be used, that has value, that is readily accessible. It's not raw ore, it's the refined gold.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think what you're talking about with user experience is you need to figure out how is the user going to use this product, and then that's how you architect the product. It's not so it's a question of architecture, and that's what a lot of software engineers probably get wrong, is they get the architecture wrong because they don't consider how the product is supposed to be used.
Well, I think that most software engineers aren't software engineers, they're software developers. And we used to distinguish between those two terms. In engineering, just like in civil engineering, engineering has a particular meaning. Uh, and we've kind of, in recent years, with the rise of boot camps and people, wanting lots of cool titles and all that, I think that the meaning of engineering has been lost in the software industry. But I don't know what else to call it, so I'm going to die on that hill.
Okay. All right, so yeah, we're still in the little abstract land. We are going to get to the RPC stuff, but there's reason why we're talking about some of this background, because well, AJ, you have a new proposal up. I failed to get that on my screen, but let me just bring this up, dashcentral.org, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. I think we've already added it. Oh, thank you, Anthony. And let me bump up the font here. I wanted to get, that's a little too far. Okay, I'm gonna refresh. Okay, so this is your proposal right now. DCD, Digital Cache Dev, RPC, Remote Procedure Call, Web Proxy and Explorer, 2024 Q3. This has been claimed by you recently.
Just moments ago.
Just moments ago, you said that you had an old account, Cool AJ86, that was on Dash Central, and for a variety of reasons, you haven't been able to get the support needed from Dash Central to claim that account again. But you have claimed it as a new account, Digital Cache Dev. That's kind of like your new brand going forward here. And so far, you've got 63 yes votes and no votes. You're asking for 4 Dash per month. Tell us about this project and why you submitted your own proposal for it.
Okay, so now we get to circle back to this while I answer the previous question as the start.
Okay.
So there's been a number of times that, first of all, I did not understand all of the RPC stuff until doing this, and then also before I was getting the there is a JavaScript node library that I was porting over to the browser. And that library, I believe, was ported from C++ because it's not written in a typical JavaScript way. It doesn't look like JavaScript code. And there's a bunch of abstractions in there that look like they come from a C++ style of abstraction, not from a typical programming style. And so I actually did not understand for the longest time that this was just a simple, very, very simple HTTP call because of all of the, if you try to follow the code around, there is just like so many places. It was very, yeah. So when I finally figured out what the RPC call actually was, which it turns out was also in some of the help for the RPC calls that I hadn't seen previously, in part possibly because it was down at the bottom, and so my pager may have omitted that as like one of the final lines was this example with curl, which is exactly what I needed to see. But anyway, so there's been a number of times that I've needed to use the RPCs, and I had been using Insight. Insight, as people have used it, are probably aware there's some artificial limitations in it, as well as some bugs that just haven't been fixed because it's kind of in this, been in this limbo state, at least the Dash fork of Insight. And so Insight is actually, it's great for having the UI, but I would not recommend it to anyone in contrast to using the RPCs directly for development, because the RPCs are law, they are canon, they are the Dash primitives, and the abstractions that some of these other tools provide don't add value on top of it. They just make it different, but not significantly better. Like calling it vout versus calling it output index. It's different, but it's not. It is a little more clear to call it output index, but I think that output index is actually what the RPC calls it. Regardless, point being, I've had to deal with the RPCs on a number of occasions, and I thought, well, every time, why don't we just have a tool like this that's available for us to do the development? And so I'd kind of do a little hack job on it every time that I needed to make it accessible. And then when I was doing the CoinJoin work and the proposal work, both of them needed access to the RPCs, and I did a little hack job again. And then I thought, well, no, this needs to be, and you and I talked about this before, I've said, well, we need a way to get stuff on dash.org, like insight.dash.org. We need a way to get stuff so that it is official. For as much as someone may love or hate that term, insight.dash.org is official. It's on dash.org, right?
Yes.
And the DCG proposals, anything that people vote on is official. That is law. What the voters decide, MNOs decide what's official. And so just kind of some thoughts all coalesced and came together. And, just having it off of Dash Incubator, I just don't think, I just don't think it's taken seriously. If we had rpc.dashincubator.org, if it came out of the incubator, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think that there's some level of not taking it seriously, that these are real tools for development. At least I just don't see that level of respect. And I thought that having it on, I wanted to have it on dash.org. There doesn't seem to be a path forward to work with DCG on these things. DCG seems to be a very closed ecosystem, and it's just not easy to open those channels of communication. I tried in the past and got kind of stonewalled with, well, DCG just can't take on the concern of security and every possible imaginable thing that would have to be done, so just no. And that's not workable. Dash Incubator just doesn't feel like the right brand. And happenstantially, I came across digitalcache.dev, and I thought, seeing that domain just kind of put more ideas in my head. This is something that looks legit, right? It's digital cache. That's what Dash is. That's what Dash really is. Dash is the short term. Digital cache is the real thing. And so I decided to put rpc.digitalcache.dev together, and it needs to be on the leaderboard. It needs to be something that the MNOs vote for, that this is an official tool, that MNOs cast their vote in support of web developers being able to work with digital cache. So I know there's, rambling, my typical rambling, but we need to have tools for web developers on the leaderboard. And so
this is what you're talking about with the leaderboard, one view of it anyway.
Yeah. Meaning that it's high up in the voting rank, right? And so I am not claiming any of this work that I did for the RPCs via Dash Incubator,
Mm-hmm.
or anything like this. This is it was a significant amount of time that I did very, very quickly to
Mm-hmm.
put this together as best as I could to meet my needs. And I know what the needs of Incubator are. I know the frustrations I've met. And even as I was doing the proposal, I added more things. So, for example, I wanted to link to, hey, why is this not up on the leaderboard? And so, well, how do I link to it? Well, I need to link to the G object. How do I link to the G object if it's not on the leaderboard? Where can I link to a G object? So then I updated the RPC tool so that I could link to my specific G object as a proposal. And so when somebody clicks on that link, it opens up and they can see my G object that represents my proposal. So even as I was building it, I was using it as part of building it. So everything that I've done around this proposal, none of it was done except for running a full node. None of it was done except with tools that either have been built as part of Dash Incubator or that I built during the proposal process. So I signed the message to get it claimed on Dash Central using the signing tool that we built 3 years ago when we were building voting tools. I submitted the transactions with the tools that we built a couple of years ago that are web ready transactions. They're what are being used in the wallet that Jojo's been developing.
Mm-hmm.
The proposal was submitted with the tools that were commissioned by Dash Incubator. So everything that's been done has been done primarily with JavaScript. There were a couple of things that are written in Go, but everything that's been done has been done with web-friendly tools. None of it has been done with desktop-only or mobile-only tools.
Yeah, this is a goal that you and I very much share. We want Dash tooling to be accessible for web developers, not people who have the dedication already to spin up a full Dash node and run their own full node and syncing blocks and everything like that. So these things should be accessible from the web, from people who aren't yet dedicated to full Dash tooling. And so I know that this show we've been in lots of different places already. There's a lot to talk about. I do want to bring you in, Anthony, to just give us an introduction about RPCs themselves, because in a former life of yours, in a former job of yours, you were working at QuickNode, which is an RPC provider. So now, as we haven't even really talked about the tool yet that you've built, AJ. So, but I want to, for the audience, give us a brief recap of a summary of what an RPC is, what you did at QuickNode. I'm going to share my. This is the website for QuickNode. Let's see, where is it? Here we are. What did you do there? This is one of your products. Tell us about QuickNode and the RPC service that you provided.
Yeah, so what QuickNode provided was a really easy way to get spun up with a bunch of different chains. So the flagship one is Ethereum, and what the RPC provides you is an interface into the blockchain, but while giving you kind of your own dedicated endpoint, so that if you don't need to necessarily use like a dedicated test net that is being run by the main team, you can kind of spin up your own. You can do this for mainnet or test net. You could do it with a bunch of different chains. They also gave you different APIs that kind of do like higher level functionality. But the main thing is that it allowed you to kind of skip the step of having to run any of this stuff on your own computer, like actually have like all the stuff we've been talking about in terms of how do you do Dashmate or master nodes or any of that kind of stuff. That is being run on someone else's infrastructure. And so it's kind of just like a cloud provider, if you think about it, similar to AWS or anything like that. And the nice thing is that it just gives you reliability and you don't have to worry about the DevOps angle.
Yeah, I did want to say a little bit about that as well, because this is one of the big issues in blockchain right now, is in any of these blockchains, is that it's difficult for web developers to want to, or even just go ahead and do, putting up your own infrastructure. And so there's been a whole industry of API, RPC API providers that do the infrastructure for you. They run a node, they set up an Ethereum node, for example. I don't think that QuickNode ever supported Dash. We talked about it, maybe asking them to do it at one point, but the idea is the same with any of these chains, is that instead of running your own node, you have somebody like a QuickNode or somebody like an Infura, or what's the other big one? Alchemy. They run your node, and then you call an API that then calls the RPC of the node itself, and then spits back the answer to you. So you're essentially outsourcing your infrastructure provision to these companies. This is something, it's kind of a big problem in a sense, but it's also, I just wanted to mention real briefly that this blog right here, moxie.org, First Impressions of Web3, he talks about this, this concept of nobody's really, in blockchains, nobody's really running your own node themselves. Nobody's running their own nodes. And so you get this situation where the whole value proposition of blockchains kind of loses its luster, because instead of people running their own nodes, they're just doing posts to Infura, for example, or JSON RPC. They just do a call, and they call into Infura's infrastructure that hopefully is running their nodes properly and the way that you want them to. And in the case of a fork, it would be these infrastructure providers that are literally defining what the code, what the project is. Like, if there were ever a hard fork and people had to choose, it wouldn't be the consumers of these APIs, it would be these node providers. So that's just one thing. I'm not going to go into detail about that. I talked a little bit about that on our last Twitter space. But let's see, where was I going? We were back here. Anyway, so that's what RPCs are. So if you're not running your own node, you might want to be able to access the data from the node. And that's what the RPC, these commercialized companies, are doing for people. Now, AJ, what you've done is you're saying, hey, you don't need one of these companies. QuickNode doesn't support Dash, but there are several that do, like
Node Now, right?
Node Now. I had a list of these yesterday that I forgot to bring up, but there are several Now nodes. I think
that's what I was thinking of.
Let's see. Now nodes.
Yeah, I checked out this source. I was curious about this, and their
search for Dash. So if you wanted something like this, if you wanted like an RPC provider for Dash, if you were one of these web developers who doesn't necessarily want to spin up your own node and maintain that, you could pay Now nodes to turn on a node, to access the node for you. So you could basically get all the data from the node from this company. Now, I think this is a problem. I don't like the idea of infrastructure being dominated by corporations. And so that's why I think the work that you've done, AJ, is very important. I'm going to come back to that with this RPC Web Proxy, because it basically lets any developer very easily access or spin up their own node if they want to, and the RPC proxy for it. So you could basically become your own now nodes if you wanted to, but if you don't want to, you can for free, essentially. Well, that comes into the proposal of your maintenance costs here. It's not exactly for free, but it's paid for by the treasury, by the by the stakeholders of Dash. So there are a few reasons why that's important, but without, I don't want to get into the philosophical and kind of political side of it too much. I want to get more into the technical side of it. So, AJ, can you kind of take the wheel? I'm going to share your screen now,
Sure.
so that you can just like present what you've built here and why you think it's important.
All right, go ahead. Okay, let me make this a bit bigger again. Let's see, I'm trying to manage two screens at the same time here. I'll make it a little bigger again. All right, so there's two components to this software, and there's kind of three ways to run it. I do want to say this is something else that I don't think has gotten very much publicity. You can run a full node either on testnet or on mainnet in two commands. So if you set up your, well, technically three. If you set up you provision your container or your virtual environment or your computer, whatever it is, you can, on Mac and Linux, you can just copy and paste this command for the installer, and you can see the source for the installer here, what it's doing, and then it'll print out on the screen to run this command here to start up the volume, and you need to supply the storage volume, so you probably need to make a directory and mount your storage volume. But that's it. That's how I set up the nodes for this RPC tool. Is I just copied and pasted and run this, and then you wait for the sync time, and that's it. So, and we can do that for master nodes too. That was another one of the projects that kind of fell by the wayside. But to finish up being able to do this process for master nodes, well, I think that will come into play shortly. But in any case, so you have to have the full node, either testnet, mainnet, whatever. And then there's the RPC Proxy, which is server software, which basically just needs to know what's the username, password, and IP address of that full node. And
You're
then
describing the process of if you wanted to run all of this infrastructure yourself and not use it as a service.
Right. So there's as a service is number one, because if somebody's coming into Dash, they need to experiment with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and select what the example shows, get address balance. You can see that it updates here with the help. If I click on curl, it updates. Everything updates live as I put it in. And then I'm just going to copy and paste in this testnet address here. You can see that the example updates curl and fetch. Those are the universal languages for understanding HTTP requests, regardless of what language you develop in. So whether you're a JavaScript developer or a Go developer or a Python developer, any developer that is a non first year is, and hopefully most first years, because hopefully most first years would have had this covered in their boot camp as the basic training. But they're going to understand how to translate either curl or fetch into their language of choice. Fetch is JavaScript native, curl is Unix native, so Mac, Linux, etc. And then there's the help. So you've got all the information that you need right here. And then if you click on try it, well, here's the output. There's what the balance looks like, the immature balance, the spendable balance received. And we can do that with anything. And in fact,
how about this one?
Which one?
Nick says like a get block. He's asking.
We could do get block, sure. So let's do get block. Whoops. I don't have that one whitelisted, or that's not one of the things.
Actually, no. Here's the context.
There is get block. Something, perhaps because of the screen share, something's going weird, and it's Oh, actually, might be on the on key up handler. I might need to fix something.
Okay.
But okay, so I can do git block, but then I'd have to put in whatever it
You'd have to
needs.
put in a block. But
So is
anyway,
that a number? Is that like I just put in the number
I don't know if
1000
it
or
works
something?
with heights or if it has to have the block hash.
Well, we'll find out
You
right
have the
now.
arguments right there, block hash. So you do need the hash.
Okay.
Um,
There is one that gets, I think, is it git block height? Anyway, you can see. There we go. Okay, so git block hash, you can put in the number, and
okay.
then you get out the hash, and then we could take that hash and we could put that hash into here, and we could run git block. And this is the raw data without any abstractions. And an abstraction, in order to be useful, needs to provide like a 2x or a 10x in value. And honestly, I think that most of the abstractions that exist out in the wild are for the purpose of capturing people's dollars, not for the purpose of making it easier to interact with the blockchain.
Well, that's what a lot of these corporations are doing. Yes, it is a big business.
Because
Yeah,
it becomes a gatekeeping, or what's the right word? When you, it makes it proprietary. It makes it proprietary to them. So once you're using their tooling, you have to keep using their tooling. If you use RPCs directly, this is Dash official. Anyway, so another thing that I wanted to point out about this, if I can actually find it real quick, was I think that it'll be right here in a chat. Okay, yes, it is. So we have here, nope, not that one. I want to bring up my proposal. So I have a link that I can click, and clicking the link will bring up the proposal.
Here, I'll add it to my. If you want to look at the screen, I will find it.
Okay.
Okay.
I may have also put it in the source.
Go to the leaderboard, and you click on your proposal, and then in your proposal you go to the external information, because I don't know if people know this, but when you submit a proposal to the network, tools like MNO Watch and Dash Central, they'll pick it up. Like you don't submit it through MNO Watch, you don't submit it through Dash Central. Dash Central is looking at the chain as the source of truth, and in that chain, in that source of truth, the external information, this is what's going on the peer-to-peer network, that you have submitted a proposal with this URL as your proposal URL. Now, a lot of people will put a Dash Central URL in here, but you can put any URL in here. And so you've put this digitalcache.dev/proposals/DCD So here's your actual proposal URL, and you have a video about it. Then you link to the actual sites for the tool itself, the mainnet and the testnet. We just looked at that. You went over that. Is this the proposal that you're talking about?
No, I meant the G object, but yes, it is that proposal. But I can't post it in the chat, but I will post it in the Discord, and maybe you're allowed to post it in the chat. So, and I'll just bring this up momentarily so everybody can see what I'm talking about. So this, I'm going to click a link, and then if you share my screen, I'm going to click a link, and then this is going to appear already filled out. So are you on my screen?
I am now.
Okay, so I just clicked the link, and the link has the RPC call in the URL. And so you can see here it fills out the RPC call, and then there's the output.
It auto-populates and also auto-executes. Do you want to do it again? Just I wasn't quite on your screen when you first started.
It'll be so fast with the frame rate that they capture, it probably won't work, but I'll do it again. So okay. I don't know if you could see that. It just blinked.
Oh, you're clicking it from somewhere else. I see.
Yeah, I'm clicking it on the other window.
Okay, but what you're saying, I think if you talked about the URL structure, people would get the idea. The developers in the room, anyway.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you've seen this before. You've seen this on things like, it's maybe not JS Fiddle itself, but sites like JS Fiddle. You know, you just encode the data up in the URL, and then when the page loads, you grab the data and you do the thing. So, but you know, so this is an obvious thing. This is not, you know, like talking about it. It's not like, ooh, wow. But at the same time, it is, because no one did this before. There is no tool that does this.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch it back to my screen because I want to show people what did exist and why you think that was not quite the right approach. So what did exist and what does exist is, so just so people know, here's the actual low level RPC documentation in case anybody wants to know that. We're done with this. We're done with this. What did exist was on the github.com/-pay/-d-RPC. This has existed for a long time. I think Mikhail in the chat said this is super old stuff. You can see 10 years ago was one of the earliest commits, but it has been maintained relatively, it's been somewhat maintained over the years.
It's been on life support. I would not say it's been maintained, but it has been on life support.
So this did exist. It's a JavaScript library that you instantiate an RPC client with.
But it does not work in the browser.
Does not work in the browser. It works in Node.
I don't know if they accepted my PR to make it work in the browser or not. But I had a bunch of PRs for this, and some stuff happened, and a couple got accepted, and the rest weren't rejected. They just disappeared because of a GitHub bug.
So talk about how this library compares to what you've built. And also, I wanted to at least mention this issue that you look.
Bring that up.
Several issues over the past few, over the past months. And then this was your most recent issue, calling to deprecate/archive this repo does more harm than good. Prefer fetch plus JS doc. Do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Just briefly, yeah. So what this library does that you wouldn't be able to tell from looking at the code is make an HTTP call that's always to a fixed string with a fixed body. And the reason I say you wouldn't be able to tell from looking at the code is that there are several layers of builder abstractions, and they're so incremental and unusual that it's you obviously, if you can execute the code in your brain and you can follow through, then yes, you can understand. But what this actually does is the function that I have here. So if you switch, or just go to that issue, go back to that issue and just scroll to the middle of the issue, because it's the same thing, what's in that issue and what I'm showing. So stop, go back up. This is that entire library if you take away its abstractions. If you just write the code as plain code without having any sort of wrappers or inheritance, this is what you get. And if you wanted to transform it to behave exactly the way that library behaves, then it's about another 10 lines of code to fill out some of the abstractions that library creates. And then a list that's, I think the list is like 30 or 40 lines long. That's not code, but that's data that the code would operate on. So that entire library, it's far, anybody can, and I will say this with confidence, anybody who is a web developer can read that block of code and understand what it does. And it is in truth, because they do the same thing, it is functionally equivalent to that entire library. That library is not providing any additional convenience other than there is one convenience it provides, but like I said, it'd be like another 10 lines of code, and I don't think the convenience is worth it because it actually gives you partially incorrect information, and I think it's better to have fully correct information or not have that information at all, not have information that is sometimes correct. So anyway, I'd recommend that anybody just use exactly what's on in that poster or that's generated here by this screen. I don't know if you're looking at mine or yours. Yeah, that fetch right there. So if you drag that bar down, That's the same thing that you see in that issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a few lines shorter because it is giving the exact request that you could copy and paste and have it run,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to giving you it encapsulated in a function as a convenience method. But other than that, the two are equivalent. So I perfectly believe that adding a little bit of convenience to that, adding another 2-3 lines to it to bring it to be more convenient, yeah, totally makes sense. But if somebody just wants something to copy and paste, this copy paste and it works.
Mm-hmm.
It works on the web. It's web native. It works in Node. It's, if you put this into ChatGPT and say, translate this to Go, translate this to Rust, translate this to whatever, GPT is going to be able to do that without any issue. It is most likely going to be 100% correct every time. That is how standard this is.
Okay, so you're bringing the you're taking away. You're saying it's better for developers to work with less of an abstraction and getting a little bit closer to. This is exactly the RPC that you would call if you were running a full node, and you've got them all covered. All you have to do is copy paste some code.
Yes, but it's a little bit different that because there are abstractions that are useful. There are abstractions that add clear convenience where it's like, well, we'd want people to know the underpinnings of how this works, but how it works is a little complicated. So let's take, for example, CoinJoin or the proposal process. Mm-hmm. There are some abstractions that need to be there in order for people to get their work done. I would not say to someone, oh yeah, just use the core primitives for GObject and build out a proposal process. The library that we created for the proposal process is an abstraction, but it's an abstraction that it 10x's someone's ability to quickly do a proposal in code. The difference between what this function provides and what the -d RPC library provide, they are at the same level of abstraction. In terms of, as a user, I need to pass in a method and I need to pass in an array of arguments. It's the same for both libraries. This one doesn't need a library because you can literally take the 15 lines of code and that's pretty printed with comments, right? And by with comments, I mean the variable names are named to what they do, so it doesn't actually have comments in there, but the variable names are descriptive variable names. So and somebody else that's a ninja coder, they'd condense that down to like 5 lines because they'd put a bunch of stuff on one line and they would have all the variables just inlined without having names and stuff like so what you're getting the same level of abstraction. You're not getting a better level of abstraction if you're using -d RPC. You're getting the same level of abstraction. Yeah. It's just that -d RPC, I cannot believe that somebody wrote it from scratch as JavaScript code. I just can't believe that. They were porting it from something else because there was some other code base that did not have an HTTP primitive, because you would never do that in JavaScript. If somebody did in JavaScript, they weren't a JavaScript developer. They weren't a web developer. Because you would never it's a thing that you would do in another language. Like, let's say that you were a TCP dev. Let's say that that's how you were raised. You might create some sort of abstraction like that if you were not a web developer, if you were not familiar with the web. I know a guy who, he's like 55 years old or so, and to him the web is scary. So he's building a web product now, and I've been brought on to that to kind of help get that production ready. And we've had some conversations, and I'm saying, hey, this is actually a standard practice thing. He's like, oh well, I'm just not familiar with the web. My whole life I've been doing device work and, TCP sockets, et cetera, et cetera. So I could see some guy like him in good faith making a library somewhat similar to this, because it's like, oh, I don't really understand JavaScript. I'm used to working with TCP protocols. I don't really understand the web. Like, obviously I use the web every day, but in my development processes, I'm working on embedded devices and it's just a different environment, right? But that code was not written by a web developer. Okay. So you get the same level of abstraction, you get the same convenience, but one, you can read and immediately understand as a web developer, I understand exactly what this does. and the other one you can't.
Okay. So I have a question here that I don't remember the context to, but Mikhail Shenmik says, what indexes are enabled on your endpoint?
Okay, so go back to my screen. So this is the installer for Dash D, and you can see here it tells you what the recommended hardware is. This actually needs to go up because now I think that matching what DCG suggests since the introduction of Evolution of 200 gigabytes, you could do 150, but you can't really do 100. You're gonna have a problem with that. But anyway, I think you can still get by with 8 gigs. It seems like. But anyway, so this installer will create, in fact, we can go look at it. Let's go look at it. It will create, because the assumption with this installer is that the reason you're using it, actually I'm going to go to Dash Core because that's where it copies the script from. Was it, or is it Dash Core Utils? Sorry. There it is, Dash Core Utils. So Dash D also installs Dash Core Utils, which are not official utilities, but you can see I've got a dash.example.conf. So the idea of this installer is the reason you're installing it is for doing merchant or integration work or development work of some sort. And so all of the indexes are turned on. So if you want to see what that's like, I'll see if it'll allow me to post this link in the chat. So all the indexes are turned on, but I will say it won't let me do that. So again, Ryan, I will post this to you and maybe you'll be able to repost it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the private chat.
Will it go in the private chat? Let's see if it goes in the private chat. Oh, it does go in the private chat. Okay, and I'll put the other one there as well, the previous one I had posted. So I may not have gotten all of the RPCs correctly sorted. So let me go back to the code for this. I'm going to close out some of these other things so that we don't get distracted by having too many windows open. So let me go to the code for this. And there is a static directory. And in here, this is a public RPCs directory. So before we start deploying this on masternodes, we do need to go through this with a little bit of a finer eye and make sure that I've categorized things correctly, because there may be RPCs that are public RPCs that I left out. And by public RPC, what we mean is does not access masternode capabilities and does not access wallet functionality. So disable wallet, disable masternode. If you were to run Dash D as not a masternode with the wallet disabled, everything that's left is a public RPC. All of the things that you would try that are not public RPCs, you would be getting back an error on. With at least one exception, which is gobject submit is a public RPC, but it may, because of the way the code is structured, the code is not structured according to public versus private. It was not designed with that type of security in mind. So it does not segment the code that way as far as I can tell. I could be wrong about that. If I'm wrong about that, then great. But these are all public gobject methods, but gobject also has private methods. So anyway, there's a number of things here that we just need to double check to make sure that this list is correct. But this list is something that can be modified at deployment time. So this list is what's embedded into the binary, but all you need to do is create a public folder that has your copy of this list. And when you deploy this, you could expose it either way you want. So this file is the same defaults. And if some new RPC comes out, then, you know, without waiting for a new release of this, you could just change this file. And in fact, what I might do is add an init command to this so that it creates the folder that has the web stuff in it so that that's more obvious. Because you just create the public folder and then whatever's in there is what gets served for the Explorer. So this Explorer is embedded in the binary, but if you just create a public folder and then you put in your own index.html or you put in your own mvp.css or whatever it is, then it's going to serve that instead of the one that's embedded so that you can quickly prototype a change or get new functionality or you know, prototype fixing a bug to submit or something like that.
Very cool. Very cool. So Michael Cluster says, not going to lie, this is pretty cool. And then says also, I'm voting yes on this proposal. It sounds good. It looks like, yeah. And it looks like, he's not the only one supporting this so far. If we want to zoom back to the proposal, I don't know if we actually went through all of it, but what else did you want to say on the technical level before we zoom back to the higher level, what you're trying to accomplish more generally outside of just this RPC stuff?
So let's see. I think this kind of covers the technical. Again, like,
You
I
wanna
don't
go
know what
through the
audience
Go code at all, or because I know, like, people might not know, like, you've done a lot of JavaScript stuff, but your one true love in programming is Go, right?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Go, and I'm looking forward to Zig becoming more stable so that I can enjoy Zig as much as I enjoy Go.
And this web proxy was written in on the back end side is written in Go.
Yeah, and I mean, for better or for worse, I've begun embracing. This is not the better or worse part. I've begun embracing GPT 4.0. Before GPT 4.0, I thought that GPT was pretty useless. It wasted more of my time than it helped. So I didn't even try GPT 4 at all because I was so disenchanted with 3 and 3.5. But with GPT 4.0, it may also have to do with my prompt engineering skills are better. I'm asking questions in a better way. But I was able to save myself a lot of time by generating most of the boilerplate for this code using GPT 4.0, and then just, correcting a few things, renaming a few things, getting it to match my style and the cleanliness that I like to have in my code. But for better or for worse, this was largely generated in concert with GPT 4.0. And the reason that I want to point out that this is a good thing is that what it says is that what I'm doing is so standard, so easy to be understood, so well known, has so many similar examples across the web, that I was able to put it into a generation tool, and the generation tool was able to give me an answer that was 90% correct, and I just did a few edits. I mean, it's that also downplays a little bit, because I would say that GPT saved me like 10% of my time, because the other thing is, it's 90% of your time is not the code. 90% of your time is you testing the code, documenting the code, and I could have used GPT a little bit more, because GPT is pretty good at writing some tests and stuff like that. But there's things that, as part of the coding process, you discover what's right and wrong because you are the coder. You're dog fooding your code as you're creating your code. And so you're realizing, oh, wait, this isn't quite right. Like, having this input is cumbersome and not intuitive. Let's back that off and do it this way. So it's not like, oh, I put a few sentences into GPT and I got back this code and this was zero effort. This was actually, this was a very large effort over a very short amount of time. So I did all of this within 2 days. I don't believe that this actually contains any of the libraries that we've created before, just because of the way that this code worked out. I didn't have to use transactions. I didn't have to do, like, what is here on the page is completely novel. And from the Git commit, I believe I created everything within 2 days. If it wasn't 2 days, it was 3 days. But it was a very high intensity effort. I spent over 20 hours on it. So when GPT saved me time by writing 90% of the code, it didn't write the front end code. I do have an output. I just wanted to see what would happen if I gave it some front end code to write. And the output is pretty laughable. So I just tried that once and I didn't go any further with that for what I wanted to do. But anyway, the point being that, the Go code was so normal compared to what other web developers are doing and what's industry standard practices. There were enough examples out there to be analyzed that GPT was able to do something that, if you were just doing a hack job, that code alone would have worked. Obviously, I wanted this to have some more polish to it. And so, yes, it saved me some time, but I'd put it in the realm of 10%. And I think that, even if people are having lots of their code generated by GPT, if they're focused on the quality of the outcome, It's going to be like a 10%, maybe a 20% time save for people that are really good and have a lot of experience using GPT and LLMs. But it's not oh, that, this was so easy, even GPT could do it. No, it was so standard and well understood in general that GPT was able to assist greatly.
Anything to say about that, Anthony? You're our resident GPT guru.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using it for a bunch of stuff for a while. I think there's a little bit of a learning curve in terms of like not using it in a way where it takes more time than you save. But yeah, I think especially, I mean, AJ hit on the fact that the more web standard it is and the more kind of general to, like not a specific library or package or something like that, it's really good at that kind of stuff. And it pretty much knows just how to program and knows how to program for things that it's been trained on for years and years and years and years. So this kind of stuff like, curls and fetches, that's going to be one of the things that's going to excel at.
Cool. All right. Well, I really like this project. Like you said, AJ, I wish that we would have kind of stumbled upon the need for this a lot earlier. It would have, I think, helped in some of our other projects as well. But this is the nature of the beast. You just kind of have to find it when it's most relevant.
The need was there, but having done the work on the proposal system so that because proposals were a black box to me, and I don't like black boxes. And to my own detriment, I will just stay away from stuff that's a black box. But having to work on the proposal stuff was what gave me the confidence. Okay, because I don't want to do this crap if it just ends up in the trash bin. Like I'm so burnt out by that over the last couple of years where the value isn't recognized, and I needed it to go before the voters so that the voters could put forth, this is an official tool supported by MNOs.
Yeah.
And so we've had the need for a long time. I've known we've had the need. And like I said, I did these little hack jobs because it's like, oh, I just need this as a one-off. And I knew I was going to need it again. But it's like, well, if we don't have the support of the MNOs, this is all new to me. I don't know how this interaction with MNOs is going to go because I've not directly interacted with the MNOs before. I don't know who they are. I don't know what their usernames are. I don't know what their likes are. I don't know what they believe. So, the MNOs are a black box, but I guess it's a black box that I'm going to learn through doing proposals. And I'm hoping that we get this at the top of the leaderboard, and that, they say in sales, you need to get 3 yeses, right? And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do here, is that it looks like we're going to get the first yes on, yes, MNOs vote to support web developers. And then I want to get the other yeses. And one of those that's coming up is MNOs support being able to run this type of software for the community. Now, I don't want the one that's on digitalcash.dev to go away.
On the MNOs themselves, you're saying, on the master nodes themselves, you think that this service should live on the master nodes themselves?
Yes. And so the future proposals, that there's 2 in particular that I am noodling on and will soon get to writing out. They're not going to be 4 Dash proposals. They're going to be me looking at, okay, how many days am I going to work on this? And from that metric, because I make my living coding and I'm not doing charity. I'm a mercenary. I'm expensive. I'm not trying to, give anybody a big discount because I like you. Like, that's not sustainable. What's sustainable is actual programmer rates by people who are knowledgeable and doing what they're doing, making the best tools that they can. And so I will give a little bit of a discount in the sense that I'm gonna do this on a week rate rather than an hourly rate. So and that's what I need anyway, right? Because weeks are more important than hours in terms of my income, because I'm only going to be working on so many projects in a week. And the hours and that, like, I can only work so many hours on a project. Having a whole, 2-week period paid for or a whole week period paid for allows me to be more unrestrained in that I can put in as many hours as I want. Because if I put in fewer hours and not necessarily like I'm not going to be able to switch my brain over to another task that day and work on something else anyway. Like when I work on a project, I'm pretty much just working on one thing on one day, and I'm working up to the point where I get halted and stopped and I need somebody else's input, right? So with this, I've got years of experience. I know a lot about what the constraints are technically. So if the MNOs will unleash me, I will unleash.
Okay, well, yeah, I think this is a great direction. I like that we took the project that we were working on with Niles, which was how do we get the ability to create proposals directly from a website instead of having to copy and paste commands into a full node console. And we were successful with that. Niles figured out, we'll talk about this in a later show, probably how that wrapped up, but we were able to, as a team, finish that library to the point where you actually took it to the next step and used the tool that we built, the tooling. I think you just did it on the command line, or not the command line, but anyway, you used the tools that we built for the proposal stuff. You created your own proposal to support this RPC stuff. And
the RPC stuff will be used for both the proposal when it goes live on the web, as well as the proposal tool, as well as the CoinJoin tool when that goes live on the web.
Yes, and I like this direction. I'm looking forward to your other fuller proposals as well, because like you said, you did this RPC, a lot of this RPC work on your own dime, but that's not sustainable. You'll need funding to continue developing stuff like this in the future. So I'm looking forward to those. I'm glad that the incubator was able to help get you to the point where you're now hopefully able to, in the future, have your own proposals that are successful. So we'll see about that. And anything else to say? Final words. We've been going for about an hour now. So,
well, I'm not confident enough to leave the incubator yet, but I will say that if these proposals go well, and I'm able to do proposals that basically, cover half a month's income for me, and I live in a tech valley. Things aren't cheap. I demand a high price, but I'll get the crap done. So if that turns out to work, then there could be I could have less time available for incubator, and that might be a success all the way around. But as for now, it's not my goal to leave incubator. It's my goal to get some things that I believe need to be done as soon as possible, done quicker, and have buy-in from the MNOs. And also, let's just put it bluntly, there needs to be a signal to DCG of what the MNOs care about. And it's important to me that DCG is going to be able to see this RPC tool up on the leaderboard. And I hope that puts in their heads, maybe we should have more focus on the web. Maybe the directions we're taking things, although, and I'll do this analogy, right? Rocket ship to the moon, really cool, really glamorous. Everybody loves it. Easy to get advertisements to put it on a cereal box, right? Getting a Toyota Corolla to take you to the grocery store, world-changing, kind of boring. Impacts your daily life, can't live without it, kind of boring. And so while the moonshots, there needs to be investment for that, for morale boost and everything, the majority of where things need to go is where the puck is going to go. The majority of things, the majority of the interest and the investment need to be in the things that are world changing. Going to the moon wasn't world changing. Your life is no better for having gone to the moon. Damn, it feels good, but it didn't make an impact, right? So
you're saying people need Toyota Corollas more than they need spaceships in their everyday life.
Yeah. And this vote is a vote for a Toyota Corolla. It's a boring technology that's so well understood that GPT was able to greatly assist with it. But it's going to have a huge impact on people coming into Dash, being able to explore it, become familiar with it, and understand the primitives. And we need more of that. And we need it to run on masternodes.
Agreed. I think that's a good place to leave it out. I'm not sure if it'll be next week. If it's not next week, it'll probably be the week after that. We'll probably have maybe Niles on, somebody on to talk about the proposal stuff itself. Or we may actually wait to get a user interface on that before we demonstrate that. But that is coming as well. So with that, we'll say see you later, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Later.